Recording going on. All right, gentlemen. Well, Ruben, you look like a white angel. The background is clear. You still look like a holy man. White.
I need the white kippah, you know.
So today we are in our perplex group, the perplex group. This is our regular Tuesday meetings, 8 o'clock Israeli time, I guess 1 o'clock US time. We talk about subject we just come up with. Today we thought we'll talk about, we started off the love and passion in Torah. How does Torah look at love and passion? Does Torah address love and passion? Because I always thought that basically the Western society understanding, he met the girl at the bar and he fell in love with her and then got married. And then from there they have kids and the 2 cars and a garden, an American dream or whatever dream is.
And a dog.
Yeah, and a dog, a couple of dogs and a kid. In the old society, it was people get married and then everything else evolves. And they're like a fiddler.
Well, you know, it's very similar because nowadays they meet at a watering hole, and that's where that's where Yitzchak found his wife. There was at a watering hole, right?
Yeah. Here's and let's see which one. Who?
Well, actually, Eliezer met her at a watering hole.
Eliezer met, but the Jacob met Rachel at the watering hole, and he actually helped her.
Also, right, dragging, right, and they're always like fighting about water. Abraham also was fighting about wells. That's where Beersheba comes from.
Well, you know, I was saying when Fiddler in the Roof, remember when his kids are becoming like communists or whatever, and they live in the big machloket in a family. And then, but he gets affected, Tuvia, and he said to his wife one time, "Do you love me?" And she's like, and I remember it was like a operette, something. Do I love him? I wash his clothes, I prepare his food, and he is asking me if I love him. What? So it's a concept of love. It's like, what are you talking about? You know, we've been married for 50 years. Like, so. How does the Torah address it? The love and passion. What do you think, guys?
Ruben, go ahead. I'll finish my apple.
Okay.
Which is the fruit of love?
That's what Eve gave Adam, right? So, Ruben, what do you think?
It seems to me that the Torah, it's interesting. It doesn't seem to address, you know, passionate love so directly. Whereas it draws attention to it indirectly. I mean, it draws attention to Yudah and Tamar and David and Bathsheba. You know, all these curious kind of involvements they're very graphic about, or Lot and his daughters, you know, but to it more indirectly refers, you know, it says that Yitzhak loved Rivka and brought her into his tent. It says that Leah was not loved, but Rachel was loved. It really doesn't. It even indirectly, even obviously, they say that Sarah was very beautiful. It's very curious medrash that Sarah at the time was the most beautiful woman in the world, but compared to Chava Rishon, Sarah Imenu was like a monkey. So, you know, it talks about these things. It even talks about how men would have one wife to have children and one he loved to, to have relations with. And it's almost like it refers to it indirectly, not head on. The sages talk about the fact that the Mashiach comes through these indirect ways, because if it comes in a direct way, the negative forces are going to oppose it and they're going to interfere. Whereas when it seems to be an indiscreet or immodest way, the negative forces are distracted by that and they don't interfere with it because it seems up front to them to be something negative, which they like, it's so you have these stories about Mashiach. On the other hand, I mean, Jewish rules are real strict. You can't touch any woman except your mother or your wife or your sister, your daughter, your granddaughter. There's strict rules about men and women being together, even to the point that to adopt a child is very difficult because if it's a girl, the husband can't be alone in the house with her. If there's no other woman there, and it goes on like that. It's very complicated.
Wow.
So, it's if you want to talk about passion, it's always indirectly. Even couples can't hold hands in the street together. I mean, it's almost that same thing. To look at directly at it, it's very strict and very modest. It's only the indirect way that it's given more attention. I don't know what you think.
I see a lot of the tea people walking around Israel, and depending if you go to Mea Sharim, you will see that. But you can see a lot of the tea people walking around. I saw people very religious and they're holding hands. Young couple, like maybe in their 30s, they're going and holding hands. I didn't see any problem with it personally.
Well, I was in Crown Heights about 10 years ago with my two daughters. That was before they were married, and we were walking along. It was during Sukkot, and I see this young couple. And the fella has a small knit kippah, and his wife has a tichel, and she's wearing a mini skirt, like a leather mini skirt. And after they walked away, I asked my daughters, I said, "What was that?" And one of them said, "Oh, that's called Chabad light." But that was my daughter Minna. My daughter Pearl said, she thinks it's actually a good thing because in the old days when the Rebbe was alive, basically a couple like that either have to be strict or just leave. There's no place in between. But now that there's this thing Chabad light, so a lot of people can at least be a little bit, Orthodox without feeling pressured to be more extreme than they can tolerate. So,
By the way, I just looked up in Hayei Sarah in the Brit 24, chapter verse 67. It says like this in English: in Isaac brought her into her tent. Brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother. He married Rebecca. She became his wife, and he loved her. And thus was Isaac consoled after his mother. So love her came the last. He introduced her to the family. He married her. She became his wife, and then he loved her. So it's not like, I guess when she was coming on a camel and she saw him and she veiled herself, all that decency, did he see her from a distance? Did he fall in love with her? Did Jacob, when he saw Rebecca, did he fall in love with her like physically? And that's why he loved her more than her sister Leah? I don't know. It's like you said, Robin, it's very difficult to ascertain. Torah indirectly addresses love and passion, but I think I mentioned to you guys, like one time I saw a dress by the Rav who's married like 50 years, and he was making a presentation. He said, when I went to a date, 50 years ago, I went to the date. I met with this girl. I go, Shidduch arranged a date. He says, we sat down, and I said, and instead of saying, well, what usual date, what do you do? What's your business? I go to school. I have this. I am for this. My dreams are to become archaeologist. So he says, what your dream? He says, I just said, I want to get married and have children, have a good family. And he said, that's exactly what I want. I want to get married and have children and have a family. And then they said, listen, when do we get together and marry? Then a couple of days later, he said, we'll get married. And that was 50 years ago. So he says, I always knew this is what I want to do. There was no discussion falling in love and being infatuated and being attracted and looking 10 girls. I kind of like this. I don't like this. This girl's eyes are not blue enough or brown enough. This guy, like, it was like I was supposed to get together. It was not a person, and that's it. But I guess everybody looks different than this. I mean, just I don't
Well,
know how Torah looks at it.
well, we have to remember first that romantic love is a, it's not that it never existed in the history of humanity, but romantic love was a side thing in
No idea.
ancient societies. I mean, if you look back at, for instance, at European nobility, right, kings and princes and dukes and stuff like that. So they had, they were married out of politics. One prince from that place married a princess from, or a queen from another place,
Mhm.
and they married for political reasons. It would bring peace to the kingdom. And that marriage was supposed to produce an heir, and that heir would become, the king of the united, that united principality. But they were not married out of love, and sometimes those couples, the king and queen, they sometimes even resented one another and even hated one another.
Mhm.
They had nothing in common, and the women that the king or that prince wanted to have sex with or was in love with, or if he had a mistress or a few mistresses that he actually loved and was really, sexually attracted to, those were other women, not the wives. And it was
Yeah.
very, very common. The Greeks did not even the Greeks did not even believe that a man and woman can really love each other. They only thought that love, real love, could only be with just between men, because only men can understand each other.
Mhm.
That, by the way, I think is right, and it goes up until today.
Mhm.
We do not understand. We only understand each other, and I think women. But we have to also admit that women don't understand us, and they just understand each other.
Mhm.
Well, and there was
Uh,
an interesting book
yeah.
by called Iron John, written by a poet, Robert Bly. But he took this fairy tale from European mythology, and he said it's basically a tale about the emotional development of men. But he went in the book to describe what is the normal environment that men need to grow up in. He said basically they need a king who represents the collective and to which they devote their, they give their devotion and willing to sacrifice for. They need the clan of men to hang out with, to go hunting with. They need the fireside, after the day's hunt, to sit down and tell stories and relate to each other. They need an initiation rite, even if it's painful,
Yeah,
some
we know
African
about
tribes have,
initiation rites in Africa. They're very painful.
yeah, in Africa, they sometimes knock teeth out or make scars.
Yeah.
It's and he said that, modern the world that basically has deprived men of most of this. It's he said even like in Star Wars, Darth Vader is sounds like Dark Father. The father in ancient times used to live at home. He worked in the fields outside the house. The kids saw him all day long, and even if they did go to school, they were usually helping him after school. So they're seeing him all the time. And in the modern world, very often the father is gone from morning till night. Sometimes he comes home after the kids are in bed, and they don't even hardly get to see him. So it was interesting because after I read all that, I thought, wow, that's exactly what Lubavitch has. It's like the men have their fireside, their Farbrengen. The women have their own, and that's normal in tribal societies. Women have their own thing, cooking all day,
Everything
working with the
everything
kids.
always goes back to Chabad, huh?
Yeah, well, no, but it does because the Rebbe's like the king, and we have the Farbrengens, which is like the get-togethers. Women have their own Farbrengens, so it's like
Mhm.
that's a normal tribal society. The women have, the men have their collective, the women have their collective, and you
Yeah.
know, the men and women, they don't rely upon each other all day long for their emotional needs like many people do in modern, you know, or the what do they call the nuclear family, you know,
Mhm.
just a man, a woman, and their kids.
But that's actually besides the topic of love, love and passion in the Torah. Love and passion in the Torah, right? The story of Rachel is very touching. You know, you see a man who has been also been lied to, and he decides to give another 7 years of his life, so that's
Yeah.
14 in total, to get the woman that he really loves.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
the right Lavan, נכון?
No, then father.
Lavan is the father. He wants to he wants Isaac to marry Leah,
Yeah,
and that's not like
Yaakov to marry Leah.
Yaakov, yeah.
Yaakov. Okay, I can never
Abraham,
remember.
Isaac, Yaakov. Yaakov's the
No,
last one
that
with
I
the two
remember.
wives.
That I remember, but I always get mixed up with
But I,
the.
Yeah.
we know what you mean. We know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So the marriage that Lavan has in mind is not a marriage out of love. It's
It's
a marriage.
arranged.
It's arranged, and it's by custom. He tells
Yeah.
him we marry the elder daughter first,
Mhm.
and then the younger one. And I don't care if you love her or not. This is who you're going to marry.
Mhm.
And
Well,
he,
some of Farshim say it's actually a little bit of a knock from Hashem to Yaakov, saying, you know, it's not our custom that the younger one comes before the older, and Yaakov is younger than his brother Esav.
Mhm.
So it's like, oh, you swapped out. You know, the younger one tried to get the blessing, but that are here. The real custom is the older one gets the blessing. It's like a little,
Yeah,
you know, a little dig.
that's right. That's yeah, it's like a mirror. Like it's a mirroring kind of story.
Yeah,
Um,
what goes around comes around. Yeah,
Mhm.
mhm. But also we also have to remember that the Torah was written in times when really, like Reuben says, the society was much more tribal and much more,
yeah,
a desert dwelling society, and they were herders and working in doing agriculture. They
yeah.
were very simple,
Nomadic.
nomadic, and so it was a very, very different society from what we have today. And really, I think that the notion of romantic love, that you marry the one that you love, and you can choose until you fall in love. You can wait until you fall in love, and you choose the one. It wasn't always like that, and I think it's really started. I think that what really gave the popularity for this concept of romantic love and then romantic marriage, or marriage out of romantic love, is maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there was something else, but I think it's like Romeo and Juliet, the greatest love story. This is Shakespeare time.
Yeah,
This is
plays, novels. Yeah,
yeah, and of course literature and poetry. Um, but
Pride and Prejudice. You know,
we
all that kind of
know
stuff.
that
Yeah.
there was a life of passion and falling in love, and people did fall in love. But I think it was actually more difficult to fall in love, definitely in the times, the biblical times, and I would say 200 years ago and beyond, to the past, because families usually kept their daughters at home, and young men, when they were going, whether in the big city or in villages, going from one village to from the village where they live to work in another village, I don't think that they have seen too many young women going out and about.
And as they did, they
By
probably have a
themselves.
veil.
No, No, and so
Yeah,
certainly
no, so in the
even
Muslim
in
world,
Victorian
right?
England, a woman was expected to be chaperoned if she was going out. She wouldn't
Yeah,
go out alone.
yeah, that's the way it still is in Saudi Arabia. A woman cannot go alone on the street without a man
The
with her.
company, yeah.
Yeah. So it could be anyone. It could be her father, it could be her husband, it could be a brother, but there has to be a man with her.
Yeah,
Otherwise, she's a slut. She's a
I
whore. She
think
can
the
be
yeah
raped.
the point I was trying to make with what I was talking about is that we uh, we we
This is
feel
why,
we need this
Ruben,
idea.
speaking
We
about,
need this idea of romantic love so much more because so much more of life is just focused on the man and the woman. Whereas in more tribal societies, it was much more diffused. Your attention was diffused in much more areas to the men, to the community, and hanging around the house with the wife was just not as common a thing. And the wife wasn't so central to your life. It was more of a community life. And
yeah.
certainly you spend time with your wife and you're together, but it's not that total dependence like you have now.
Hmm. And now also, I think that when we talk about love, is love today, people say, "Oh, I'm going to wait until I find Mr. Perfect or Mrs. Perfect," and this is basically, it's like love is satisfaction. So
Yeah,
it's not a tool to it's not even a tool anymore to you know have kids, make a family, and be a part of your tribe. Marriage as also as a thing that is not just for you and your own personal reproductive needs, because everybody personally wants to have kids, both men and women. That's the
yeah,
way we are. But it's also sort of a tool, or how should I call it? Maybe not a tool, but a thing that keeps the tribe alive. You're also a part of something, and this something, it doesn't exist today. And I think that because the Torah doesn't really care, I have to admit, doesn't really care about romantic love. So yeah, the story of Yaakov and Rachel is really beautiful. But when it comes to the actual mitzvot, right, the law, how a Jew should live, what is God's law? Romantic love is not really, is not important. I don't
Yeah.
know if there's
Well, I
any
will tell you
mitzvah.
something interesting that I learned is that I saw advice based upon the Talmud, I believe, that if a man has a choice between marrying a very sneut woman who's very modest, very careful in her dress, but is not as attractive, not as pretty, or a prettier, more attractive, sexier woman, but she's not quite a sneut, he should actually choose the sexier, prettier one, even if she's not a sneut, because the attraction and the satisfaction is more it's more of a risk not loving your wife than the fact that she might not be always dressed perfectly. So
Mm.
Mhm.
that's interesting. So they actually do say that
Acknowledge the psychological drive,
given a
right?
choice, it's better to be attracted to your wife than to choose somebody who's more
I was
more
I, wa- I, wa-
safer.
I was wondering, guys. I would think it was definitely in Kabbalah it says, but maybe in Midrash that, well, in the Torah, if you read Breshit, man and a female, male and female made, and the God created the man, male and female, to create it here. So the whole idea, according to the mysticism of our tradition, say that it was one being, and that's, of course, to me, it's not taken literally necessarily, but conceptually. I'm not going to go to too detailed because it's beyond our, but in a simplified fashion, it was created one being. This is how to be honest, I kind of relate to, because I spent a lot of my life, not before being but Tshuva become more close to religion, basically like every Western guy would, and then later when I start thinking about this concept, it makes me kind of relate to it better, that God created the being, then he split them. and then became
Yeah, he
man and a
said they were
woman.
back
And
to
then
back.
and
They
he
were
sent
stuck
this,
back on back, and they
and
split
he,
them in half.
and he sent them out to the world. And now we're spending our lifetime. I'm looking for my. I believe I found my half. There she is over in the back. I mean, she's cooking for tomorrow, And if I ask for tea now, I say, honey, can I have some tea? She probably say, yeah, I'm coming over here to make the tea. So, those of us who, and some people maybe all their life they can find it for other reasons, and some people find it immediately. But that concept is transcends to me concept of love. It just you have this sixth feeling. You're looking for a special something. Sometimes we make mistakes and find the wrong something, and then eventually get something. So when you think about that, it's completely different approach. They love, and that has nothing to do with it. This is just what it's like two magnets. They're coming together and beyond any earthly things. Is that because it's beauty? It's because she's a well-dressed or schneers or good cook? It's just simply that's what have to get together. And when they do get together, then the perfection hits home. Everything there. You say, this is my things. Or is she beautiful? Of course she is. Is she a good cook? Of course she is. Is she this? Everything she is. I found this is it. I can't say, is it pretty? Am I physically attractive? This is like two magnets. They get together. What do you mean? And that's what's supposed to be like that. So I kind of feel it that's what really love really
Well, if you can
is.
find your Bershert, that's really nice, I think.
That's Besher, right?
But I think David mentioned, people have their standards too high, and I think it's also a problem. They expect everything to be magical and perfect, and to find the perfect person, the perfect woman, the perfect man, and there's no such thing. I mean, I was just reading a story about somebody went to the Rebbe and said that one of their fellow Chabra, it was one of the issues recently that he just can't seem to find a shidduch. And the Rebbe wrote back that he's too fussy. He expects perfection. He's not going to find perfection. So he took it to heart and eventually found the shidduch. But and there's also women the same way. They sometimes they want perfection and they can wait and wait and wait. It's nobody's perfect.
When I think about it, as you guys talk, just think about this very interesting thing. Adam did not have a choice. God created Eve for him, and that's it. That's the only female you're going to get,
But if she was the most gorgeous woman in the history of the universe, so maybe she wasn't so bad.
Okay, but as
he was not the most, because like David said, Adam didn't know. That's it. I mean, this is my wife.
Exactly.
Maybe he thinks she's just ordinary,
For him, she was ordinary because he probably was the most perfect male in the history of the universe.
Yeah.
Right. So, but also, so she was the only one. He didn't have any choices. He didn't have another 72 virgins like in the Muslim heaven, right? So, and then they start making having kids. And many generations, and it says in the Torah that even after Abel and Cain, Cain killed Abel, and then Seth was born, and and another few generations. Just think about it; these people were hundreds of years old, and Adam was still having kids with Eve hundreds of years after Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
It's it says that they vayolidu banim ubanot, and they had many boys and girls, sons and daughters, and I'm like, so he has many daughters, and so now he can choose. I know it's incest and stuff, right? But it's what we're talking about is out of logic. So there is choice, right?
Yeah.
There is choice. There's many daughters. I once heard a joke from a Bedouin told me a joke about two Bedouins, a very big family going to a holiday in a weekend in some hotel in the north, in Tveria or something. And so he sits with this guy, and a beautiful young woman goes by in a bikini, and he says, "Oh man, look at that!" And so he says, "You idiot! That's your eldest daughter." He doesn't even know her because he has so many kids.
Yeah, he had like 57 kids.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't even, oh, what a beautiful woman. So just think about Adam, this guy has 23 children.
Yeah,
Adam potentially had hundreds of children, right?
yeah.
So anything could happen. He would know, oh, who is that girl? Who is that woman? That's your daughter. How old is she? 300.
Oh,
Oh yeah, she was born 600 years ago. Yeah, now I remember.
I remember the birthday party, right?
But the Torah says that he only produced children with Eve, with Chava, right? It doesn't say that he had many, many. Chava was imposed on Adam, and I think that the concept of marriage, at least the religious perspective, is the same one.
I've heard stories in the Midrash that Adam actually had relations with other women or creatures.
That was in Kabbalah. He had the relationship with like a spirits, and it's like a wet dreams. He had this relations.
Exactly. I'm with you on that, Lev. That's maybe wet dreams of the authors.
And here producing demons and demonites and demonons and demonons and all sorts of things.
Yeah. But it's interesting. But I personally like to cling to what is actually written.
But you bring a very interesting point, David. I'm thinking maybe the message. I always try to find the message there. The message is there. Maybe like Reuven also said that. Don't have to be so choosy. You have to feel it and say, and that's natural. Adam and Eve, give us an example.
I always think that religious thought or religious philosophy is embedded in hardcore human reality, which is a reality that we know today because we have these definitions and words like the unconscious, our bodies do things while we think about other things, so Reuven is a doctor, so he's performing, he's in the middle of work and he's performing some test on one of his patients, while the food that he ate 40 minutes ago is now being digested and is turned into whatever it turns into in his body, and he doesn't even know that's happening. So like there's two sides to reality. The one that we are aware of and things that we are not aware of. And I think that religious thought it comes from trying to explain, and it comes from that place of more of the unconscious, trying to explain where life came from, what is sex, what is attraction between male and female, because that's the most fundamental. This is part of your survival,
I just heard a philosopher talking about the fact that in previous times, the meaning of life was the essential thing. And meaning is not necessarily logical. Whereas nowadays, people are trying to make everything revolve around, materialism, which is just trying to understand how things work. But that doesn't tell you what life's about or why you should live or what you should do. It's and the loss of that.
I don't think that capitalist materialism is really about how things work. It's about just satisfying your urges,
your physical needs.
Yeah, just your physical needs, because we know that satisfying your physical needs creates a feeling of pleasure. So you feel pleasure when you eat, you feel pleasure when you have sex, but you also feel pleasure, but maybe it's a little bit, not that, overwhelming pleasure of a sexual orgasm or a very, very tasty, cake, chocolate cake with cream or whatever. But you also feel very good with yourself when you buy something for yourself, like a book that you wanted to read for a long time,
Mhm.
or maybe a new jacket, or I don't know, whatever, a new midrash book, right? And you feel good about yourself. I always felt great when I was buying a new DVD, right? A new movie. I just bought it. Oh, great! I'm gonna have it in my collection. Wow! And you're sort of in euphoria, like for 30 minutes.
Doesn't
And
last though.
so, uh,
Doesn't last.
it doesn't last, but it's there. You feel happy
Yeah.
when you buy something new. Always, you feel great. And the fantasy, it happens to women a lot. They go shopping for clothes, and in the shop, there's many clothes, and the design of the shop, and the lighting, and there's music always, and everybody wants to help you, get the perfect dress or the perfect
It's
jacket or the
love. It's love.
and then they go out, with the shopping bags, and they go home, and they put the new stuff in the cabinet, and the fantasy breaks apart. The fantasy just disappears,
Not
and
only
it's just
that,
there.
Henny Young, the comedian Henny Youngman said, "I like to hold hands with my wife. If I let go, she shops."
well, then she has to make sure she didn't lose the receipt, because that blue dress not exactly what I wanted. I need to exchange it. I should have got a yellow.
So I think we came to the conclusion that the Torah doesn't really. I think you will agree with me. It doesn't really care about um, just love, passion, or lust on the personal level. I don't know
Well,
I
any
think
mitzvah. I
it
don't.
cares only insofar as it helps cement the bond for the family and make a stable family.
Yeah,
To
so what
that
he's saying,
extent, it does.
it has a more noble goal in there, and that is
Yeah.
just simply a lower level mechanism of relationship and feelings that's
Yeah,
only
it's not an
subservient
end
to
in
another,
itself so
to
much.
more, to greater good, greater goal. That's
Yeah.
what you're saying?
Yeah, I think it's because the reality is that kind of fantastic, passionate, love at first sight kind of love. That feeling doesn't last. It might last a few months or half a year, maybe a year, but it's very rare that it continues. It settles into a more stable kind of relationship. And I think people, especially in modern movies, they get focused that they're supposed to feel like they're in love all the time. And then they're no longer in love. So then they say, well, I should just get divorced or find somebody else.
Yeah, 50%
They can
divorces.
also, by the way, they can also say, "Oh, that movie sucked."
Yeah, that was an
Interesting,
idiotic
interesting.
idea.
So what we're saying, we have like a minute and a half. So what we're saying is, yes, the Torah does talk about, and David said kind of indirectly touches on it, but not in the same way that currently today in the Western world we understand it. It's a very different type of concept, even though it mentions that, and if the words sound, the verbs and nouns sound similar, but the meaning is very different from today's society.
I really think that if people want to, speak about love and passion in the eyes through religious eyes or through a religious concept, I think they maybe should go to Kabbalah more than to the Torah, because the Torah will, I think, a little bit will disappoint them. Where in Kabbalah, if they are spiritual people, maybe they can find something that maybe that will give them, some spiritual answers about love and passion, but not exactly in the Torah.
By the way,
Excellent,
I
guys.
posted some of the lyrics from Tevye and Golda on the chat if you want
We
to
have
look at
30
it.
seconds, Ruben.
But
That's it.
Let's do for next time. I don't know, Ruben, you have time to look at this topic. David also.
let me look and see if I can come up with something.
And anybody
let you
who is
know.
watching our tape, also a challenge for you. If you want to bring a 14-minute special presentation for us, please do that. We're always looking for good speakers. And
Okay.
with that, guys, we're gonna close today's sessions. Love you guys all. Love. Okay. Have a good week. Shabbat Tov. Stay in touch. Jabari. Kol Tov. Talk next Tuesday at 8.
Bye-bye.
Okay.